Welcome to another episode of Holy Homo Healing Hour. Today we have with us Freddy, who is a teacher, artist, and activist from Washington, D.C. He is the podcast host of DMVCBN, and he's going to explain all about what those letters mean. And he is recently single, so we're going to be a matchmaking service. It's all good. Welcome, Freddy. Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am known around the internet as DMVCBN, aka the DMV Comic Book Nerd. So, like you said in the bio, I'm from Washington, D.C., but locally, the Beltway area is known as the DMV because it's D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, it's all connected. So, I was trying to branch out and build community in the area based around comic books and reading them, collecting them, just meeting other fans locally, but this is kind of branched out. Now I'm on YouTube, I'm on Threads, and I'm meeting people from all over the world. And I met you guys on Threads, so I love.
Yeah, I
Nice.
sure did. That's awesome. Carrie and I are big nerds, video games, manga, anime. So
Cool.
you were in with your people.
I love it.
What do you teach?
So primarily, I teach music, and that involves more than you would expect. Like I teach all ages, but also I find that you also end up teaching fundamentals. Like you teach
hmm
kids to read, and teach them to cover their mouths when they sneeze. It's a job where you wear many hats.
Carrie is actually an English teacher, and I do not teach music, but I do have a music education degree, so I kind of
Cool.
understand. It was a long,
Yeah.
long time ago when I did my student teaching, but I remember it.
Nice. Yeah.
But yeah, very cool. All right, well, let's get started into the fun stuff. Tell us a little
All
bit
right.
about your religious background.
So, I was born in DC, raised into what I later came to understand was pretty middle class African American lifestyle. My parents, we weren't a church going family, but my mother did raise me to know Christ, to believe in God, to pray. So that was pretty formative. Like she instilled in me a personal faith in God. And my father was not religious. He identified as agnostic. So that was interesting when they started putting me in religious schools. I went to public school up until third grade, and then fourth grade, I was in a Lutheran school for middle school. And high school, I went to a Catholic school. So I got to experience different denominations, different styles of worship. And in those schools, I did kind of feel a little bit like an outsider because I realized I wasn't part of those denominations, but
hmm
I never felt too pressured to be part of those denominations. But I would see my peers who were part of those denominations and the experiences they had, like if they had to do catechism or different things. I would say it wasn't until later on when I was 21 when I really started to have a crisis of faith, so to speak. I will backtrack a bit and say in my teenage years, that was when I was starting to discover my sexuality. So that was a struggle being in Catholic high school. In those teenage years, I did struggle with suicidal ideation. It was a struggle to accept myself. And I think that kind of came to head in my early 20s. And one day I took an offer from a coworker to visit their church. I believe they were in a international church of Christ. And I remember them being very big on discipleship. We had a lot of Bible studies talking about the Bible. And I think it was at that time I really started to read the Bible for myself. I had read it in school. I was familiar with it, but I never really had an interest in reading it until in my 20s. That was when I started to really feel like I heard God's voice speaking to me through the words in the Bible. I came to feel like a feeling of enlightenment. I don't know. It might have also been weed. Like I was smoking weed, getting high.
Never tried that. Getting high,
I
reading the
recommend
Bible.
it.
I gotta put that on the list.
Yeah. But in general, though, I would say I was lucky to have that time in my life where I was able to just take some time for myself, study, ask questions, and figure out where I felt I needed to be because there's so many directions a person can go in life. So I didn't really stay with that church. Trying to remember why. I can't really say at the moment. I guess life led me in different directions. But what I do remember is I was pursuing therapy. You know, I got this idea. I'm gonna move to New York City and see what that's like. So I did that, and the thing I feel like I learned the most from that experience was New York City is a big competitive place. And even though I was from Washington, D.C., which is also a big city,
Right.
it's not as big as New York City. And I eventually realized I can go back home. Like I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to go back home. And I learned how much I appreciated my parents because when you're a teenager, you don't appreciate your parents. And then when you're out in the world, you start to realize, well, maybe they actually have some good ideas
Maybe they kind of know what they're talking about sometimes.
sometimes, especially my dad. I remember having some really contentious times as a teenager, but after I came back from New York, I started to appreciate him more and I was more intentional about repairing our relationship. I do have to give God credit for that because God helped me look at my flaws and accept what I didn't understand, like to open my eyes that there are things about my father I didn't know unless I talked with him more and was willing to see his side of things because he was not like LGBTQ ally.
Yeah.
At least not at first. It was really a beautiful thing to witness him come around. 2016 came around. I was involved in a church that to me didn't seem to speak out against, I'm going to be pretty frank and just say Donald Trump.
I was gonna say 2016. That's Trump time, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep, yep. So that was a really important year because that was the year I came out to my dad. Like I already came out to my mom. Thankfully, she was cool with it. But she was like, "Don't tell your dad."
Oh.
You're gonna age yourself, but how old were you when you came out to your dad?
So in 2016, I must have been 27.
Okay. Wow, so you were older when
Is
you
that
came
right?
out to your dad then. How long had you been
Yeah,
out up to that point? You said you were out to your mom, so
yeah. I came out to my mom, I believe, when I was in high school, when I was going
okay.
through
Oh
that
wow.
Wow.
period. And yeah, thankfully she was always very accepting of me, very loving. Yeah, it was challenging to like have a secret with some people and not with other people.
Yeah,
By the time 2016 came around, I was fully grown, and I'm tired of lying. I'm tired of BS. I just want to be myself. I've always been a person who had very little tolerance for BS, whether
Mm.
that's in, school or just personal life or whatever. So in 2016, I was like, I'm an adult. I am making a decision to let love into my life because I identify as queer. I've used different labels in my life. I've gone to I'm gay, I'm bi, I'm queer. Right now, I prefer the term queer. Um, I definitely had to come out to my dad, let him know who I was, come out to my church, let them know who I was, and see how they responded. And the church, they let me down. Like they considered homosexuality a sin. So I would have to step back from things I was doing, serving different ministries. I could go to a group for dealing with sin, so to speak. But you know what? I don't see it as a sin at this point in my life.
sure.
I've studied it, I've gotten over that, and I believe that it's an expression of love. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to waste my time doing all that stuff. I'm just going to go elsewhere because at that age, I realized, there are other churches that do accept queer people.
Yeah.
What denomination was that church?
That was a Wesleyan church, and
Okay.
it seemed very inclusive and welcoming prior to 2016, but the political events of the time opened my eyes to where they really stood. Because as an African American person, I known that you can be Christian and be very outspoken about what's right and what's wrong. Like Dr. King, he had a lot to say
Yeah.
about what's right and wrong. So if he can call out politicians, if he can call out racism, if he can call out sexism, all these things, why can't my church do it? And if they won't do it, maybe I can find a church that will. Did a lot of spiritual seeking at that time, trying out different churches. And that's just the crazy thing about being a queer Christian is you find a lot of Christian communities who say that they're welcoming, their doors are open, but then when you get in there, you realize, but they're not offering you equal status to everyone else. I went to a church that had a LGBTQ small group. We would meet up, we'd study the Bible and stuff, and they had a pastor on staff who was gay. He was getting married, but then the other pastor there who was like, I refuse to marry gay people. I'm like, what? Like you have a gay pastor on staff who's getting married, like you, and you seem to support him, but at the same time, in your ministry, you're not going to do that. Like, and we had the LGBTQ group had an opportunity to ask him some questions, discuss this stuff, and the pastor was like, for the sake of our congregation, I don't want to alienate the people who have an issue with it. I'm like, what? Why does their opinion matter? Like,
Yeah,
they're
well,
not
it's okay to
involved.
alienate you guys and your
Yeah,
Yeah.
alienate you guys, but not everybody else, right?
Ugh.
Exactly. So like I definitely felt alienated and left that church too. Like at this point, I didn't have a problem leaving churches. Either we're aligned or we're not. So
I think that's a theme with a lot of churches and religious people is they offer quote unquote love, but they don't offer the acceptance. And what they don't realize is that without the acceptance, there really isn't love there. If you don't actually accept me for every part of me and who I am, then you can't really say that you love me.
exactly. Yeah. And like if you're saying that it's okay for straight people to get married, or even if they fornicate before marriage, they'll be all right. Like, but like with
Yeah.
gay people, if they have sex at all or if they get married, like, that's a no-go zone. It just always felt very unfair to me. It didn't make sense. And luckily, I did come to find some churches that I feel are fully affirming. Like they say it with their full chest. They have the rainbow flags. You know, they're out here every day advocating for LGBTQ equality as well as many other things. So I would say ultimately that led me and my mother to United Church of Christ, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. Yeah, so we found a beautiful church community where it's very small. The people there, they seem very genuine. We've had like big Bible studies where we talk about LGBTQ identities and sexuality, and it is welcoming in the sense that like it has people who are queer, who are LGBTQ, and people who aren't. So people who are asking questions, but the people who are leading it, they definitely understand the struggles of LGBTQ people. Every church service, they will, you know, go over the LGBTQ crisis hotlines and all the crisis hotlines in general, like people in crisis,
Yeah,
and they've been in crisis.
that's awesome.
And so it's like we
Yeah.
want people to have various options to turn to, in addition to each other and the fellowship and community that we're building. So yeah, I still identify as Christian. I think what I've learned is that you can't really count on any group or person to always be there for you in life. But I do believe that the promise of God is that God will always be there. You can always call on God. So that's why my personal faith remains despite
Sure.
all the struggles of the world. And so I'm hopeful that, things continue in a good direction with this church. What I've seen of the United Church of Christ, they have a social media presence. My church in particular, they have online YouTube presence as well. I definitely encourage people to find something like that if they're curious, if they're seeking that, because especially in these times, it helps to have community, to have other people who are expressing that you are beautifully and wonderfully made the way that you are. And it's not a sin to want to love another person, to be loved by another person in a consenting relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about reconciling your faith with your queerness? You said that you did a lot of research. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think the biggest thing was reading the Bible for myself and finding out what revelations God had for me through the text. Because a lot of people, I think, especially people who are raised in the church, or people who are raised in a school environment, you don't feel that connection to the word always. Like it's just something that's there, right? So when I started reading it for myself, and I don't know if I've read every single part of the Bible, but I've read most of it. And I guess my takeaway was I wanted to get the context of it versus the minutia of it. Like everyone has like a verse to justify whatever they believe. But I do too. But I started looking at the overall message of the Bible. Like I started zooming in on the New Testament and the Gospels and Christ's message. Like if people are Christian, how much do they value the words of Christ versus the words of all the other people who are attributed to writing the Bible versus to all the different stories and all the different contexts? Like put a emphasis on what Jesus was saying and what the stories say that his life was like. And I do have that faith in Jesus that like despite the history of Christianity, I do think that his message of love, his message of, helping the poor, the needy, like lifting people up, bringing people together, I think that is what it's about. So I never wanted to reject any of that. There's a bit in Jeremiah where God talks about how he has a plan for your life and a purpose for you. And it's like, and I felt that he was talking to me directly. Of course, he wasn't. And like the text is not written to me, but I, I felt that the message was for me
Absolutely.
in that
Sure.
time. And when Jesus is giving the Sermon on the Mount and talks about how if God cares about the birds, if God cares about the grass, how much does he care for his own children? And like made me realize like I do believe God cares about me. Like despite what anyone else says, I think God has brought me this far, and I do think that God has a purpose for my life. Like otherwise, I wouldn't be alive right now. Like I said, I struggled with ideas of suicide. And I believe that God lifted me out of that. That God gave me skills to cope, like reasons to live. Don't know where I would be if I didn't believe in God. I look at the story of Lazarus and how he was dead. He was in the tomb and Jesus brought him back to life. I felt like I was Lazarus. Like I was someone who was so near death, who was ready to die. And God lifted me out of that. God showed me a better way. I committed my life to God. Like later on, I was baptized. So at that Wesleyan church. So even though it was hard to leave that church, it doesn't nullify the vows that I made to follow God.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And another thing Jesus said is like, if you go into a town and they don't accept you, then leave that town and wipe the dust off your feet. Like just let it go. So like little bits of wisdom like that, I feel like are ancient wisdom that like there's a reason why people still worship Jesus millennia later. I think there is wisdom in the Bible, even if there's also a lot of craziness and trials and trauma and terrible things.
Look, I'm an atheist, and I absolutely think that there are great messages in the Bible. I think there's a lot of wonderful truths in the Bible. I think a lot of it has been twisted and corrupted. And I think what you're saying about following Christ is so important because, in my opinion, there's a difference between Christ followers versus Christians, at least modern day Christians. And
Christ was a cool dude.
Christ was a cool dude,
Yeah,
man. Like,
yeah.
if I met Jesus, we'd be homies.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like Jesus loved the people who were ostracized, the people who were marginalized. He was always hanging with the people who were outcasts. I feel like people who are mainstream don't quite get that.
Yeah. What's it like carrying the name Christian in today's society? If someone asks you, do you feel like you have to be on the defensive of, oh, I'm not that kind, I'm this kind? What's it like holding that?
It's definitely a challenge. Like I don't have any hesitance about letting people know that I'm a Christian, but at the same time, you get pushed back all the time. Like just the other day, I was responding to someone online who was like, "You cannot be pro-black and Christian at the same time." And I'm like,
That's a
"Well, what
claim.
would it is?" And I was like, "Well, what would Harriet Tubman say about that?" Like she's famously someone who was pro-black, who freed the slaves, who freed hundreds of slaves, and at the same time, all records indicate that she was a person of faith. Like I can only imagine what that was like to feel a divine calling from God to allow you to risk your life time and time again for a cause of justice. Like, and we see it all the time, not just with Harry Tubman, with Dr. King, like I mentioned before, but so many people, and not just Christian people. Luckily, I come from a background where I was able to study lots of different faiths.
Yeah.
I like to study Buddhism. I like to study Hinduism, other traditions, and kind of learn. I believe that any avenue to God is probably a worthwhile pursuit, or even atheism as well. Like atheists are good people too. So
Thank you.
I don't judge. I'm just saying that for me, I find strength and I find value in connecting to God, to connecting to my ancestors, and just opening my eyes to the ways in which I do believe, despite how much evil has been perpetuated in the name of Christianity, I think there's an under-recognized amount of good that Christianity has uh, inspired people to do in their lives. People do good things every day. It's not in the news, right? So I think that's the Christianity that I believe in. Like
The current church that you're in, do politics come up? Like, is that something that, yeah,
all the time. Like I said, like
yeah,
I was seeking a church that was going to be more outspoken, like Dr. King. And I think I do believe that there is a division between the black church and white Christian nationalism. Like it's pretty clear.
Absolutely.
Like who was it that said Sunday is like the most segregated hour, in America? Like might have been Dr. King.
yeah, that's good.
Carrie and I talk about that a lot, actually. Yeah.
So as a black Christian, it's not a question for me of like, can you be political and religious? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's interrelated. Bishop William Barber, I think he's a good example of that, who's carried on the legacy of Dr. King, fighting with the Poor People's Campaign, being political. Like, when you vote a certain way, it shows what kind of faith you follow. Like, are you someone who PRA wise, or are you someone who PRE wise on the poor and the needy? Like, it's always been political, going back to Jesus. That's why the Roman Empire hated him and feared him, and so did the other Pharisees and all the people in power. They're like, you know what? He's trying to replace our authority. He says he's the King of Kings and all this stuff. They perceived him as a threat, and they killed him as a political act. And
Yeah.
they killed Dr. King as a political act. They killed Malcolm X as a political like so many people have been killed and lost their lives for the sake of either their religion or their politics. I just feel like we have to kind of find some kind of understanding that brings the two together. But it's bigger than me, it's bigger than us. So we'll see how things proceed in our lifetime.
I assume your church is outspoken against the current everything going on, gestures
So yeah,
vaguely.
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah,
Like
that's
yeah,
good.
if you look up the United Church of Christ on social media or the website, I think you'll find political things. They're on YouTube. Look up BCC, UCC, or Beloved Community Church if you're someone who wants to see people in today's world seeking God and speaking out boldly against fascism, against white supremacists, against evil. Also, Dr. Bernice King, like the people who are Dr. King's descendants, they're still out there trying to spread messages of beloved community and bringing people together, fighting militarism, poverty, and they call it the triple evils. I'm blanking on the third one. Racism. You just say bigotry because that covers so many things: racism, sexism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia. Like we gotta fight all that stuff.
The Wesleyan Church, was that a slow decline as political ground started shifting? How were you feeling being a part of that church and then seeing as Trump was on the rise, they weren't saying anything?
It was definitely something that became apparent that it wasn't for me within a matter of weeks, if not months. I was there for at least a couple of years. I was deeply involved. I was part of the worship team. I had made a lot of friends. It was my community at the time. And it seemed diverse, and men and women in leadership, had black and white people, and every people of every ethnicity. So on the surface, it looked like the kingdom of God to me. But in 2016, when the political question came of like, who are you going to vote for? That's when I started having discussions with people and trying to figure out where they stood, and had some very painful discussions and very rude awakenings. For example, there was a white man who I had come to know volunteering in the church. We had gone on retreats together, and he had an interracial marriage, and he had children, and I thought he was cool. But then he came out, very strongly conservative, and he was really upset with me for my non-conservative beliefs. I was like, well, I don't know what to tell you. I got to a
Yeah.
point where I was like, I'm not going to argue with you
Yeah.
for my own peace. I need to let this go. And I have learned over time, you can't fight every battle. You can't
Mm-hmm.
um you can't engage with everyone you disagree with. Like the real nail in the coffin was just speaking with the pastors who there was two pastors who I felt really close to, like the one who baptized me, another one who had an offshoot church that I was helping to build. I think both of them just didn't really quite understand or give me the support I was looking for at the time. And that's when it became very clear to me that it's two big issues that were stopping evangelicals from being more progressive. And it's abortion and LGBTQ identities. If it weren't for those two things, I think a lot of evangelicals would be Democrats or vote Democrats. But I think the church has so thoroughly made abortion evil and made LGBTQ identities an evil that it's a red line that they do not cross.
It's so wild to me because both of those things aren't even in the Bible. Like,
Right.
I just don't understand.
I mean, it's all
Exactly.
political. They did a great job of picking something to make it very political to split.
Yeah, it drives me crazy. I'm like, you guys are for traditional marriage, but like, have you looked at what marriage was in the Bible? Women were being bought and sold. Like, if you
Concubines.
died, you had to take men had to marry. Yeah, the concubines, they had to marry the sisters.
Yeah, the sister of the wives. Yeah.
Like, that's nothing
Multiple
like what our
wives.
idea of traditional marriage today is. Why is there this big disconnect? Are you guys reading the Bible? Is the question that I have.
I've known pastors who were married and divorced multiple times be like, oh, but the sanctity of marriage. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
Like, don't 50% of people get divorced? Didn't Jesus say, it's okay to get divorced?
Yep. Yep.
There are parts of the Bible that say it's better not to get married.
Yep.
There's so many things that once you really dig into it, it's like, why are people not getting it? But you can't make people get it. You can just try to like share what you believe and maybe find like-minded people. If I may, I do kind of want to share one radical revelation that I came to.
Go for it.
In my reading of the Bible. God forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Jesus was gay. Like, if you read this Bible, Jesus was gay, y'all.
Yeah? Okay, let's go. Let's talk about it.
First question. Why did he never marry? Like, he's famously an unmarried bachelor. Yeah, he died. Sure. He was murdered young. The Jesus that everyone's worshiping was not some traditionally married conservative.
Hanging out with dudes all the time.
Yeah, 12 disciples.
He had tons of dudes following him. Like, he sought out men. Taking off his clothes, wearing a little towel, washing their feet, like having these intimate connections with other men, and kissing them. Like, so many parts of the Bible be like, reach your brothers with a kiss. He was betrayed by a kiss. There's so many things that to me feel very homo romantic. But when I read the book of John, and that's one of my favorite books in the Bible, it's different from the other three gospels. And of course, there are other texts that have been lost or actively cut from the Bible. That's another story. But as far as the four gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, I like John because it just tells a different story. It starts from a different place. It focuses on different things, and it specifically tells the story of the disciples whom Jesus loved. So have you heard about that? If I asked you right now, who would you say that disciple is? Do you have a theory on that?
John?
It was John,
right? John was the beloved disciple.
He claimed himself. He's like,
I'm the favorite.
That's the popular belief. But when I actually read the book, to me, I came to a different conclusion. I could be wrong. I'll admit it. But when I read it linearly, you come to the story of Lazarus, and it expresses how much Jesus loved Lazarus more than anybody else. That's why Jesus brought him back to life in that way.
That was a big move.
Yeah, like he revived a few other people here and there in other gospels, but in John, this was a big deal. And that's saying something to say that he loved Lazarus more than Mary. He loved Lazarus more than his other disciples. Like, it doesn't say he loved John.
No, John's the one. John's the one that said.
John's the one who said, yes, you're right. So then after Jesus revives Lazarus, it goes on to say that you don't see Lazarus again. Like, where did he go after being revived? But then after that is when they start referring to the disciple whom Jesus loved. And they don't refer to him by name until like the end. But I kind of believe that like a lot of queer people have this experience. Like when you are born again into your queer life, you sometimes take on a different name. Sometimes have a whole different perspective. Also, when Jesus was on the cross, there's this whole scene where Mary's at the cross. He points to this disciple whom Jesus loved. He says, "This is your son now." And to me, that's such a beautiful way of being like, this man that I love so much, I want him to be part of this
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
And I want you to accept him the same way you accept me. And just the fact that Jesus died on the cross and was persecuted for our sins, I'm putting air quotes because I'm talking about the sin of homosexuality in particular. It seems so relatable. How many people have been killed because they were queer? And that's it.
Mhm.
It just feels very relatable. I do think that, reading the context clues, it feels like a queer story to me. But,
Yeah,
I
you're
think,
right.
again,
I have
the
no
Bible's up to
rebuttal.
interpretation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm here for it. I've always vibed with Jesus, so that would make a lot of sense.
I never thought about him turning to Mary and being like, "That's your son."
Yeah,
Like, that's such a
that is a
like, yeah,
statement.
of
Yeah.
that one particular person. Yeah, that is a
Yeah.
statement.
And for them to just iterate over and over that that's the one who he loved. Because Jesus is known for loving everybody. But it's another thing when you have that one special person you put above everyone else. But there's this intangibility about it, right? Like I've listened to a few other of your guests who have spoken about how like they didn't always know if God was there or if God was real. And you hear that very commonly in life because it's a big question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is God an imaginary friend? Is God Santa Claus? Like what is
Right.
God? Who is God? I just feel very blessed to have been someone who always was able to ask questions. I know that's not the reality for everybody. Some environments are very against people questioning God,
Yeah.
but for me, I'm like people in the Bible question God. Why can't we question God? Why can't we grow closer to God by asking questions?
Do you think from your dad not believing, do you think that opened an avenue for you to be able to question and have the freedom to question something because you had someone in the house who was also not religious?
That is an interesting question because I never really thought about it that way because it just wasn't much of a topic of conversation with my dad because he just wasn't
Right.
religious at all. We've had a few conversations before he passed away, but I do think that maybe it did have a positive effect just by seeing his life, seeing the man he was. Now that his life is over, he lived a full life and he was a real person and he cared about his family. He loved his family. Even though, we all fought, we all had our differences, I know that he loved me. And I even feel blessed that he was able to express that before he passed. If I hadn't gone back home, if I hadn't intentionally tried to repair that relationship, I don't know if we would have ever come to that. Yeah, I think it helps having a positive role model in my life who, even if we disagreed, we could talk and I could ask questions. And I guess I would have thought about it more in the context of school because, like I said, I went to these religious schools and they were not like particularly conservative. I mean, it was a different time. I do recall like gay was a slur. It was like it meant bad. Like everybody was just
Yeah.
casually throwing that around. But it was just a different time. Like I was younger, and I don't think the divide between left and right was as big as it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
If you live through it, you know. But if you don't, I worry about younger generations who
Yeah.
Yeah.
don't know what it was like because just the other day there was news about the Supreme Court about to take up a case
Mhm.
Obergefell versus Hodges, and I'm like, we were there when in 2015 when marriage equality was legalized. That was such a big thing. The White House was lit up in rainbow lights.
Yep.
Obama
Yeah.
was president.
It's
To
crazy.
me, it was like that's the America I'm trying to go back to. Honestly,
Yeah.
I know we're in a time where everything is so complicated. Like people don't know if we'll ever get back to some of what we had or if we can only move forward through this. But I would say generally, I hope people understand that elections have consequences. Voting is a right people have died for. Even if we have people who have taken over, who want to be a dictator, who want to harm LGBTQ persons and people of color and black people, indigenous people, all these things, like we have to band together despite our differences and fight
Yeah.
against that.
That's such a good point about younger generations. You're right, like us growing up, like yeah, there was Republicans and Democrats, but it was nothing like what it is now. It is so it's so polarizing. I kind of wonder if that in a way contributes to Gen Z getting more conservative. I wonder if that mentality of choose a side is influencing them to choose that one.
I really believe that the fact that we had Barack Obama, a black president, for 2 terms was a polarizing event because you had people who supported him enough to reelect him, and then you had an entire movement of people being like, no, we cannot tolerate this. Mitch McConnell from day one was like, we need to obstruct, block, prevent him from doing anything good. And then you had the whole Tea Party movement. You had people making effigies of him. This hatred, racism is nothing new, but it was different when we had hope and we had a belief that things were going in a positive direction, that the people in charge were not going to, like, that the evil was fringe. But now it's become normalized to the point, like, this is why in 2015, 2016, when I saw Donald Trump come down the escalator and ascend into power, I was like, you gotta watch out for this guy. I've been trying to warn people left and right. This is why I mentioned I do a little bit of activism. I've been protesting in the streets against Donald Trump since then. I've been trying to let people know. And I feel like we're in a time where the people who have been doing that are not really respected or listened to. Don't listen to the Joe Rogans. Like, they're not leading you any more positive.
Lately, the only voices that I have even remotely been willing to listen to about Christianity are of people of color. And I think that comes back to the Black church has seen this before. They were a church when slavery was happening. So they have seen these polarizing events before. I grew up in a white church, had a lot of faith in the people there as good people. And so the first time that I saw them being racist and homophobic, I'm like, wait a minute, I thought that this isn't what I thought was happening. It was mind altering for me to see that.
But Black people already know.
And that's why I think there's a divide right now. Like, it's been hard for me as someone who has been protesting since 2016 to step back and be like, okay, I see that Black people by and large, we're saying we are resting, we are not going to put ourselves in the line of fire because most of us voted for Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Like, we did our part. So we just saw these huge No Kings protests. I have been involved with No Kings and Indivisible. I helped organize the first local No Kings event in June. And I was out there then. I was out at the People's March in January when it was cold, when less people want to come out and protest. I'm just saying that in general, I've had to step back and look at the landscape of things. I do think that ultimately, if the people doing these large scale protests are predominantly white, and if people who are predominantly Black are staying home, I do think there is a bit of solidarity in that, given the times that we're in, because I feel like the people in the streets, they do want to have that multicultural democracy. They do want to stand up for what's right. And I feel like the people at home doesn't mean that they're not.
The way I kind of saw it was more people of color and Black people were staying at home because of the climate and the times, and they didn't want their presence to trigger police action. And so they're like, white people, it's your time to go, use your privilege, and they're not going to arrest you, but they're going to cause problems for us. So we're going to stay home so that this stays peaceful. Good luck.
That's a big part of it, and I agree. I do think that unfortunately we're in a time where there's so much misinformation, there's so many bad actors, especially on the internet. Like, you never really know who anybody is, and yet everyone's got an opinion, everyone's got a loud opinion. There's tons of different perspectives, and I think that it's easy to get lost in the sauce, so to speak. Like, there's also a lot of division. Like, right now, liberals and leftists seem to really hate each other, and like there's so many different factions. You got centrist Dems, progressive Dems, non-voters. Like, it doesn't feel very unified. I think we gotta be aware of that and rise against that. And like you said, I think Black people in particular have seen this before. The majority of our history in America, we've been oppressed. It's been less time that we've had rights than we haven't had rights. So it's like, it's nothing new to have our rights taken away. Slavery was how much of American history? Like 400 years if you go back to like.
Yeah.
Right.
And you got Jim Crow. It's like nothing new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Very true.
I have a little bit less political question. You mentioned you were recently single. What is it like trying to date in today's society?
I am very freshly single. I had a relationship that I was in for 7 years.
Wow.
And so that came to an end last month. It's been a particularly hard couple of months, like my mom was going through surgery. I got in a car accident. Lots of things have been happening, but losing that relationship was not expected, but I do think we had been growing apart. I think anyone who has had a relationship for that long, it's going to be a hard thing to lose. It was my longest relationship. I didn't have a lot of relationships until I was an adult because growing up queer was hard for me. So I didn't
Yeah.
start dating guys until I was 18. Even though I'm newly single, I'm not back on the dating field yet. I'm afraid. Like I'm literally afraid. I'm like, I do not want to be back on the dating scene in this time. Like it was like I have not been on dating scene since like before COVID. So it's a whole different world and it's scary.
Yeah.
We'll see how things go. Like at the end of the day, like I do believe, you know, I deserve love. Everyone's deserving of love, and I want to have that in my life, and maybe I'll find it. Right now, I'm healing from that more than I am my religious trauma.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I feel
no,
that.
no kidding. Yeah. Well, look, Freddie's really cute. He seems very intelligent.
Thank
I'm
you.
trying the matchmaking thing, you know?
I appreciate it.
Hit up the Instagram post.
Yeah, check me out. Check out DMVCBN.
Yeah,
Yes.
there you go. Check out DMVCBN. There you go.
Yeah. Thank you. Like something I would also remark on just because you know I'm a black male. My partner at the time was a black male, which was comforting because I had people come up to me like, I didn't think your boyfriend would be black until I met him. I'm like, how am I supposed to take that? Like, what?
Yeah. What does that mean?
I feel like that is kind of a stereotype though.
Is that a thing?
yeah, with gay men. I feel
Oh
like I
yeah,
think it is. Isn't that a thing?
yeah.
Yeah.
And like he and I were very aware of when you look at most media, very rarely do you see two black men
That is
in a
so
relationship.
true.
You
Yeah.
see lots of interracial relationships. You'll see
Mhm.
lots of we're seeing more and more queer people depicted in media, but rarely do you have two black people, let alone one. Like
Yeah.
representation. This has been a challenge.
Wow.
Why do you think that is? Do you
Just
know why?
racism, point
Just
blank.
racism?
I
That's like
think
Literally?
yeah. Marketing.
like I remember post college when Glee came out. To me, that was a moment where LGBTQ identities were becoming more accepted. I mean, of course, there was also like Will and Grace and a few other things, but like I want to shout out Noah's Ark as a black queer show that was pioneering that thing.
Cool.
Have to check that out.
But in general, though, the world has just never been accepting to people on the outside, whether it was in Jesus' time or whether it's in our time. There's always someone who's on the bottom. And when
Yeah.
and we talk about intersectionalities, when you are black and queer and maybe a woman or maybe trans or so many different things, you're even more vulnerable and threatened than you would be if you were just one of those things.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Mhm.
it's just hard.
Yeah. Even in the queer scene, look at gay people's reaction to the trans community and a lot
Yeah.
of not a
It's
lot,
true.
but there's so many queer people that don't accept trans people and it's just wild to me.
Can I just shout out Chapel Rowan? Like I just saw today that she just raised like what was it, $400,000, maybe a million. I don't know. I'm bad with numbers, but she raised a lot of money for trans people and LGBTQ youth, and
Awesome.
like we gotta support that. Like so, I
Heck yeah.
appreciate
Heck
that.
yeah. There's some
Yeah,
good news.
yeah. There's always good news if you seek it out. Like that's a big thing for me. I'm as much as there's bad news, I think that my faith leads me to seek out the good news. Like, and
Yeah.
Jesus brings the good news to people. He says there is hope, there is a future, there is a heavenly kingdom that is better than you could ever imagine. I do think it's important to speak positivity into people's lives, into our own lives, and have a positive vision and to, believe that there's good in us as humanity. It's not all bad. Like it's definitely, there's a lot of bad,
Yeah.
but we gotta amplify the good.
Yeah. As long as you are happy in your religion and your religion's making you a better person and it's making you feel good,
Yeah.
then let go. I'm all for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although I do sometimes worry that a lot of religion is kind of caught in like a feel good space
Yeah.
and also mental health as well. It's about feeling good within yourself. It's not necessarily about doing good. And we
Yeah.
got to have
Mhm.
both.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So I always want to warn everybody as much as we want to feel good and overcome depression, overcome negativity and things, we also got to keep a mind out for the other people in our lives, the most vulnerable in our lives, lift them up and just, keep trying to make things better.
Just what, 10% of the churches were just out there doing good, I think we'd be in a much better place. So yeah, I agree. Definitely having
The more community mindset,
the community
outreach.
mindset.
Yeah.
Love your neighbor. That's what it's about.
Exactly. That's what it's all about. When I was looking at the context of the Bible, that's the main message.
Yep.
Plain and simple. Love your neighbor as yourself. Like, you gotta love both. You can't love one more than the other. If you let go of yourself too much for your neighbor, then you're gonna run out of steam. You're gonna burn out. You're gonna crash out.
Mhm.
But if you love yourself way more than your neighbor, then they're gonna suffer. We gotta find some kind of balance. This is where the Buddhism I study really helps me, because they're all about balance and
I do love the balance.
yeah.
Totally agree that is, if you have to sum up the Bible, I think love your neighbor as yourself pretty much does it. And the disconnect of that versus what's happening now is just wild to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Definitely.
don't understand, but hey, there's still some people out there trying to do good and
Yep.
to love their neighbors. So
I think that's encouraging too.
Yeah.
Especially for an audience who has so much trauma with religion. I think it's good to hear voices who are still like, "Yeah, we're trying to do good too."
Yeah. And not to minimize anyone's trauma, like I have my own trauma, and I respect other people's trauma, and whatever decisions they made out of that, I don't blame anybody
Mhm.
Yeah.
for the choices they make, especially if they're queer. Like, you gotta do you in this world.
I think that's a good segue to the final question.
Yeah.
It's the final question. We like to wrap up our show with our final question, which is, if you could go back in time to baby gay Freddy, what words of wisdom or love would you share with him?
So I think I would tell him to never let anyone make him doubt that he is a child of God, that he is loved by God. Uh, like, the Bible does say God is love, and all who are in love live in God. So, and God lives in them. So I really would encourage him to just hold on to that and to believe that God wants you to feel loved. God wants you to have love, to give the love that you have, and just to live in love. Like, life is too short to only dwell on the pain of it.
Yeah.
Pain is unavoidable, but they say suffering is optional. I think Jesus is a perfect example of that. He was dealt unimaginable pain, but he showed us a way out of suffering. If I was talking to myself before I was lifted out of my deep depression, I would say, hang on. I can't promise that the world will get better, but I can promise that your sense of self-esteem will get better. Your relationships will get better. Your value of yourself will get better, and you'll come to value other people better. And that's what will get better. I don't know if you guys remember that "It Gets Better" slogan from 2000s. Like, everybody was saying, LGBTQ people, it gets better. And now it's
Right.
2025.
Yep.
I'm like, did it get better?
It did for a minute. It was good for just a short minute.
I'm hoping that the pendulum overcorrects. We had the black president, we had the LGBTQ marriage equality, and I'm hoping that this is just an overcorrection and that it's all going to balance out and we're going to get to that good place again.
Well, that's the scary thing, isn't it? We hope that the pendulum will shift back, or, shift back even harder. But that's a scary place to be, where it's so precarious. It can go back and forth. Like, we want to have rights that are not easily taken back. And we also want to have those rights in our lifetimes. I'm with you. Like, I hope things will get better. I hope that we can find a way out of this in our lifetimes, hopefully sooner rather than later. I don't have all the answers, but I am trusting in God to guide my actions. And I do believe that miracles happen sometimes. Like, that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned, that we sometimes we have to believe in things that are bigger than us, because we're very limited within ourselves sometimes.
Yeah.
So I would just tell myself, keep on going, keep learning, and keep trying to walk in love.
It's good stuff.
Beautiful. Well, it was so awesome talking to you, Freddie. This was great.
Yeah, thanks for chatting with
Good
us.
time.
Thanks so much for having me. This has been great. I'm definitely following the pod, and I'm so thankful for what you're doing. I think it's so important, especially in these times, to preserve our history,
Yeah.
to tell our stories, and hope that there's a future where these stories are not, banned,
suppressed.
suppressed,
Yeah,
all that.
squashed.
That's honestly, so we actually had the idea to do this podcast like what, 2-3 years ago,
Yeah.
and I just never did it. And then with everything going on, I just looked at Carrie one day and I was like, we have to do it. It's time. We got to do it. We're doing
Get the
it.
stories
We
out
gotta
there.
get,
Get
we
the
gotta get the
voices out there.
stories. It's important. So
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
thankful for you guys. Keep
Aw,
on doing it.
thanks.
Thanks. Good talking with you.
Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening. The easiest way to support us is to subscribe and smash that ratings button. New episodes come out every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time.